mask or not wearing your mask? All right, welcome to the regular meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. It is July the 23rd, and Councilman Bill Shacklett has the prayer and the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. We lost, our world lost an icon in the civil rights movement last week, and as I was thinking about who might be appropriate to have the opening prayer this evening, and also tell us a little bit about the impact of this individual, I asked Pastor McCarroll to come and tell us a little bit about his life and what he meant to our world, and then do our opening prayer as well. So if you'll.
Good evening to our council and city officials and all that have gathered. I'll give you a Baptist 3 minutes explanation. On July 17th, 2020, we were saddened with the losses of not only Representative John Lewis, but also Reverend C.T. Vivian, both of which were significant figures in the civil rights movement. Reverend C.T. Vivian studied at ABC, American Baptist College in the city of Nashville, was critical in the Nashville sit-in campaign, also founded the National Christian Leadership Conference, and did a number of other things throughout that campaign, including a major march on the city of Nashville. Alongside him was Representative John Lewis, which is well known for his years as congressman in our country. He also was a student at American Baptist College and at Fisk University in Nashville. He participated alongside Reverend C.T. Vivian in the Nashville student movement. He was one of the original freedom riders, was the chairman of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was one of the big six in the civil rights leadership group alongside Dr. King and others. And ultimately, he served, as I mentioned earlier, since 1987 as representative of the 5th District of Georgia. And so we're saddened by their losses, but we're more inspired by their examples, as they didn't just speak of justice. They didn't just speak of rights. They put their lives literally on the line to ensure that our country would have the rights that it proclaims in our various documents. And so tonight, as I begin to pray, and I have about 45 seconds left as I begin by prayer, I want to just begin with a quote from C.T. Vivian, which says, "Leadership is found in the action to defeat that which would defeat you. You are made by the struggles you choose." Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of being able to gather in this sacred space. And we pray, Lord, that you would give us a heart and an awareness to not only handle the business fiscally, but also to always consider the souls over which we've been given charge, and to highly regard the stewardship given in each position and each responsibility. Let us, Lord, be ever mindful of the fact that we don't just represent the seats and the positions we have, but we represent those souls that are precious to you and those that are a part of this community. We pray for our leadership that you'd give them insight, give them vision, give them wisdom, give them discernment, and then give them the courage and the audacity to lead in the way that puts a smile on your face and ultimately meets the needs of the people that we're called to serve. Give us spirits of servant leadership as we model the leadership of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, even in this platform. And we thank you in advance for all that you have in store for our city through our leadership. Now give them the grace needed to lead the city in a way that's well-pleasing to you. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we ask it all, believing it done. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor McCarroll. Wherever he went.
He's right there.
There he is. Thank you, Pastor McCarroll. Would want to make a quick comment that this upcoming Tuesday, Dr. Windrow and I are going to continue our discussion on race. We're going to talk about policing on Tuesday. And for those who are watching, I can tell you this after our first one, this is not scripted. We are not getting together beforehand to talk about what we're going to talk about. This is really something that I think all of us can do a better job in sitting down and really just having discussions about different things that we may not understand about one another, but also that we may not agree about, and that's what we're going to do. And I'm excited about having that conversation. So, Pastor McCarroll, appreciate what you're doing and you being here, and I hope we can on Tuesday night make you proud with some of the discussions that we're going to talk about. So, all right, we're going to move into ceremonial items. So we have the power board who's here. They're all masked up. So y'all probably can take the mask off to come up here to the podium. Rick, that'd be you too, man. You can come on down.
Really?
Yep. Right here behind. I know. As of July 1st, the transaction with Middle Tennessee Electric and Murfreesboro Electric became official, and with that, we have had the opportunity to be able to recognize many of the people who are here and have served for many, many years on our power board. So we have Irene Pitts McDonald, Richard Stone. Irene, how long did you serve on the power board?
Since 14.
2014, so 6 years. Richard?
6 years.
6 years. Rick?
11.
Rick served on the board for 11 years. Ross Bradley, 6 years. Rick Lance, 2-ish years.
Whenever you say go serve on.
Yeah, Eddie served on the board. Eddie Smotherman, how long did you serve on the board?
I have no idea, but I
Eddie-
enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, and so Eddie served on the board for several years. But I want to read a proclamation, and then I think we have some awards to be able to give out. In 1939, the city of Murfreesboro purchased an electric distribution system constructed within the city by the Tennessee Electric Power Company. And in 1946, the Murfreesboro City Council created the Board of Public Utilities, which later became known as the Murfreesboro Electric Department Power Board, with the principal responsibility for supervision and control over the improvement, operation, and maintenance of the city's electrical distribution system. And whereas the Power Board, since inception, has been an instrumental part of the effective and efficient operations of the electric department, which has proven critical to the growth and development of the city. And whereas the Power Board, since inception, has overseen the development of the city's electric distribution system, delivering power generated by the Tennessee Valley Authority to over 39 square miles of its service territory, providing critical electric service to over 67,000 customers. And whereas, under the guidance of the Power Board, the Electric Department's efficient operations and diligent maintenance of its system assets achieved a value such that the sale of these operation and assets to the Middle Tennessee Electric Corporation in June of 2020 resulted in proceeds that will benefit the community for future decades. And whereas, with a dedication served to guide the electric department and to engage with business, governmental institutions, educational institutions, industrial and commercial stakeholders, volunteer agencies, faith-based organizations, they've built alliances too numerous to mention to ensure the electric department was prepared for growth opportunities and achieved the highest level of community service. And whereas our city is extremely fortunate to have such devoted and dedicated citizens willing and able to have served in the best interest of the customers of the electric department and the citizens of Murfreesboro. Now, therefore, I, Shane McFarland, Mayor of the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim July 23, 2020 is a day to honor and recognize the accomplishments of Irene Pitts McDonald, Richard Stone, Rick Hardesty, Ross Bradley, and Rick Lance. So. With that, many people, you don't realize that on these boards that you truly do serve the community with a servant's heart. These individuals gave their time, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of time that they've had to put in to talk about different things to improve our city. So it's not for the money. It's because that they love this community. So we have gotten you a memorial. I don't say memorial. That's probably not the right thing to say, but an award that says, in recognition of your service and dedication. Yeah. I'm sorry. So it says, in recognition of your service and dedication to the Murfreesboro Electric Department Power Board, this is for the board chair, Rick Hardesty, 2020. It says add fin, which means
At the end.
at the end. So, Rick, we appreciate you. And I think everyone else has their awards. Rick, do you want to say anything on behalf of
But just on behalf of the council, and obviously Shane's already said it, but, I'm hesitant to even be standing up here. You guys volunteer your time and put so much time and effort into this stuff, and, this is, clearly one of the boards where people are active and get engaged and do a job, and so I sincerely appreciate all the time you guys put into it.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much for your service.
Thank you.
Irene? Richard? Rick, do you have anything you want on behalf of the board that you want to say?
No, I just want to thank the council. When Mayor Bragg asked me to do this 11 years ago, I didn't think I'd still be doing 11 years later. Fortunately, Mayor McFarland and Craig asked me to continue, and this is home for me. I grew up in Indiana, but moved here in '95. Both of our children have been raised here. This is home, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Rick.
That's it.
Thank you. Let me give you this. Hey, and Rick has for a long time worked for Lewis Bakery, so when you're over in the area behind Toots and all that area and you smell that good smell, that is Rick's responsibility. So, Ross, thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Rick, your first proclamation. Hey, and I think it would be remiss not to say that as we move to this transition with Middle Tennessee Electric, that Mr. Bradley, Mr. Stone, and Ms. McDonald have all agreed to represent the city of Murfreesboro in different capacities with the Middle Tennessee Electric Board to be able to make sure that the fine service that Murfreesboro Electric has continued to have will move on for many years to come. So thank you for being willing to serve. All right, you have the consent agenda in front of you. Any additions or deletions to the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris. Aye. Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, we have new business, ordinance and resolutions. We have Resolution 20R20, Safety Partners Grant with Program. Ms. Russell.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Staff is seeking approval to receive a matching grant from the city's workers' compensation provider, Public Entity Partners. The Water Department purchased 86 first aid kits and 248 personal wash bottles for vehicles as recommended by PEP. The Water Department paid $1,559 for these items. PEP grant will award the city $780, which is half the cost of the purchase. This evening, I'm asking for approval to receive these matching funds. Be happy to answer any
Any questions?
questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris. Aye. Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, ordinance 20027, amendment to the city code regarding discharging of firearms.
Mayor, this is an amendment to the city code regarding discharge of firearms. The impetus for the amendment is to allow, is really found in subsection C of the amendment there, is to allow the use of pellet guns or air guns in industrial property as a means of pest control. They've been long used as a pest control, but some of the corporations really would like to see the city permit that under their ordinances. So this is the purpose of the change. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I'll move for approval if not.
Second.
Motion and second, and I thought you were passing this this amendment for Councilman LaLance and Councilman Smotherman, so
Yeah, they'll take advantage of it.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
We do. Ms. Skels
Okay.
Harris.
All right, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll move to land use matters. Ordinance 20 OZ 20, rezoning approximately .47 acres located along South Manny Avenue, Southeast State Street, and Northeast Castle Street. Mr. McKnight.
Mayor, council, before you tonight is an application for rezoning. Mr. Rhett Kelton presented a zoning application before for approximately .47 acres located along South Manny Avenue to be rezoned from CH, Commercial Highway, and CCO to PUD and CCO. During its regular meeting on June 3rd, 2020, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter and then voted to recommend its approval. Mr. Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel will make a short presentation about the application. Staff would ask that the council conduct a public hearing and consider this on first reading. Staff is available for questions before or after Mr. Roundtree's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight. Let's see here. Mayor McFarland, City Council members, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'm accompanied by Mr. Rhett Kelton, who is the potential developer for this property, and Mr. Brian Oliver, who is the architect on this property as well. We're excited to introduce you to Manny Station. This is one of the products of what I consider some unique planning opportunities that the CCO is presenting for us downtown. Mr. Kelton saw this as an opportunity to go ahead and try to invest in downtown. So a lot of what we're doing in this project is unique to this project. This is an all one bedroom townhome condo type of project, and Mr. Kelton's excited about bringing it to downtown. The first thing that's important is the zoning, and it's all commercial highway currently, and the key to the location for him was choosing it within the CCO. That provides us some density opportunities, it provides us with some parking reductions, and also helps us with the sewer allocation. As far as utilities are concerned, Manny Street has been upgraded, South Manny, and it's really nice how well it's been done. So Mr. Kelton wanted to take advantage of kind of the improvements along that street. And I know it's been a long time coming to see development start moving in that direction. So we're excited to bring it to that area. Overall, the site is relatively flat on the front end right up next to South Manny, but as it goes back towards the back portion of the site, it slopes down. We'll have some drainage concerns on the back that will be taken care of. The aerial photograph is really important because this is outside of what is recommended on the 2035 plan. Urban commercial is really more of the compatible use from the 2035 plan. This is in commercial neighborhood as far as the direction of the plan. But if you look at the aerial, it shows a combination of commercial buildings, it shows multifamily buildings, it shows single family buildings. It is within walking distance of downtown. So we feel like what we're offering here and proposing here is appropriate for the location, even though it's not consistent with what the 2035 plan would recommend. We are right on the border. If the rear property line of this property butts up to urban commercial, that is more consistent with what we're encouraging here through Manny Station. The building on the top left corner, that is the building that we are removing on site, and there's a vacant lot next to it, so we'll be utilizing the vacant lot and removing this building. The building to the right is, on the bottom left, that is a building that will remain, but that'll be our adjacent neighbor. That house right now is under new ownership, not sure exactly what the intention of that owner is. Mr. Kelton has spoken with him to kind of see what his intentions are. Right now, that house will take some energy to kind of bring it up to rental speed. There is commercial, like we said, right in the neighborhood, so that the center photo shows that. And then the bottom right-hand corner photo shows kind of the character of Manny Avenue with the street improvements, the on-street parking, the landscaping, the pavers, which makes it a really pleasant place. It's important, this photo here on the top left corner shows the commercial building across the street, and that kind of continues the theme that there is substantial commercial trying to get generated in this area. That building's been under construction for a while, but it looks like they're making progress. And then right next to us on the left-hand side, the bottom left picture basically shows the blank lot, but there is a commercial building there that is a beautician center. That's also shown on the bottom right-hand corner. So just trying to highlight that there is a combination of multifamily, single-family, and commercial in this area. Overall, the site plan has the building with commercial below. Mr. Oliver will talk a little bit more about the details of the building, and then residential above with one dwelling unit beyond on the ground level. So all in all, we're talking about 13 units, and the minimum size of these units would be 550 square feet. They're all one-bedroom units, and that's really a key component to this development. Mr. Kelton is targeting kind of a young professional, young couples, possibly empty nesters, people that want to live close to downtown, but want to live in a place that would be, because of some of the size and the density we're asking for, a little bit more affordable living downtown. We're able to park it adequately. We took advantage of the 25% reduction that the CCO provides for parking, and we do have some on-street parking as well. The building does front South Manny, so that's really important to keep that kind of streetscape theme down, kind of an urban feel. All the parking's in the rear, which we want to do to hide the parking and kind of create that urban feel. Mr. Oliver's going to come up and speak briefly about the buildings themselves, and then we'll finalize the presentation.
The building is brick with commercial on the ground floor, as Clyde said. We wanted to make it very reachable, pedestrian-wise. People could walk in off the street for one of the multiple units or tenants that could be down there. The living units are accessible from the back, and then there's stairways that go up. Each of the condos has a balcony that gives the view from the city to the city of multiple different views. Is that the only slide? No, two. Okay, so there's the rear and the other side. Also on the roof, we are anticipating using that for a rooftop terrace area.
And the last two slides, basically landscaping wise, there will be some screening around the dumpster, perimeter planting around the perimeter, and the primary key is making sure we continue the streetscapes theme along South Manny. The middle slide kind of shows that on the bottom of the picture. It won't have full foundation planting because there'll be access points along the building, but we really want to keep that kind of lush feeling that's going along South Manny consistent with our new development. And then, as Mr. Oliver mentioned, rooftop patio will be kind of our formal open space outside, and we'll have a combination of seating, a table, and some raised gardens as well, and just a place to congregate with friends and family upstairs as well. So with that in mind, that is South Manny Station. We're excited about presenting it to you. If you have any questions for me, glad to answer. Any questions for Mr. Oliver, he'd be glad to answer those as well. Mr. Kelton is here if you'd like to hear from him. Thank you.
All right, we'll need to conduct a public hearing on this rezoning request. If you wish to speak.
Mayor, can I ask
yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Roundtree, is the dimensions changed from the Planning Commission to this just slightly? It was 0.54 and it went to 0.47. Is there some reason?
No, that would have been just a change, a little bit more accuracy from the survey, I believe. So I think the GIS had a little bit more closer to 0.5, so we had to go back and
wasn't much, but I just
that.
thought if there was some error there, you might.
No, there hadn't been any changes. We did have, the staff had us go through and we looked at some of the side yards. We had to ask in the pattern book for a little bit of an exception because there's a few pinch points because the lot has a little bit of an angle to it. So as far as our parking, kind of pinching down on that kind of side yard, but that's the extent of any changes from a dimension standpoint.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
So, Clyde, are these units for rent or for sale?
They're all for sale. It'll be a horizontal property regime, and Mr. Kelton's desires to sell.
What's the price point? Do we have a price point?
Right, have you dug into that anymore since last meeting? 125. And the 125? And the 125 and up range.
They're about 550 square feet.
Right, Rick, and that's really a key component to his strategy is to make them affordable, to kind of create an introductory kind of a home living downtown, and so the square footage kind of generates that price point.
All right. Seeing no more questions, if you want to speak at the public hearing for this rezoning request, you'll need to come to the podium. If you have any questions, if you'll direct those directly to the city council, we'll get those answered at the end of the public hearing. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, you'll have 5 minutes. As an individual, you'll have 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll consider on first reading ordinance 20-OZ20.
You got something? Oh, so I had a couple of, I guess I'll list out a few concerns that struck me. I mean, it is a small piece of property, but the precedent is what I'm, I guess, mostly concerned about. When you add the residential plus the commercial, it looks like we're setting this up to about 30 units per acre. If I'm doing my math right, from a sewer allocation standpoint, we're at about 30 units per acre. And I mean, I'm a big fan of the redevelopment piece. I'm just not sure that the density is something that I could support, especially if it is. I mean, even in our package, there was some talk about the idea of this kind of maybe starting the process of redevelopment in that area. I'm just not sure. We've just scrapped something at 9 units an acre, which is in a different basin, but it's only a mile away, of 1 bedroom, same kind of deal. There's differences, but so anyway, the density is clearly at the 3rd floor terrace, right next to what looks like currently a residence, and I'm not real sure what that's ultimately going to be. It sounds like if Mr. Kelton has talked to the owner and knows that's not going to be a residence, I mean, I'm not real sure I'd want somebody up on a 3rd floor terrace, 10 or 20 feet off my window. So those were a couple of things that kind of came right to me pretty much right away. So it probably kind of keep me from wanting to support it from those levels. So I guess the last thing I forgot, the 2035 plan, I think I read, and Greg, you may be an answer, I think I read in the minutes that Matthew said that it is not consistent with what the 2035 plan has for that area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what are the reasons, I guess I would need to know from a staff standpoint or maybe planning commission standpoint, what are the reasons why we would go 8 or 9 times over our sewer allocation and strip somebody else down the road of what their allocation would be? Why would we do something that's inconsistent with the 2035 plan, and is the terrace okay next to a house?
Yeah, we thought that as we presented to Planning Commission, the sewer allocation was spoken about. Water and Sewer did have an opportunity to weigh in on that density. Thought it would be okay in that area. As far as that, the type of project, we thought that would be a good transition. Staff supported the transition from for the infill and the new redevelopment in that area, and thought it would be a good transition for that area to start that transition as it mixed with the commercial use. And across the street, there's some more 2-story.
Is generally was the density talked about? I guess from a sewer allocation, I can ask Mr. Gore that, but the reality of what we're trying to do with the density, with the sewer allocation, I think what we're doing here is literally exactly what we're trying not to do, which is strip somebody else down the line of being able to have their 9 units per acre, for example. And we've just run into that just a few weeks ago, literally, and we didn't approve that as a council.
Yeah.
So
I will yield to Mr. Gore to talk about the different areas and the capacities.
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity. So this is just a different basin. The one that we looked at a few days ago, we had a known limitation on capacity based on the Mercury Boulevard pump station, and we had done a very in-depth flow monitoring of those lines to see what we thought we had remaining. So as part of the sewer allocation ordinance, we did exempt the city core overlay from density restrictions because we did want to incentivize. didn't put in, we eliminated the CCO, or we didn't have any density in the CCO, and we didn't have any density restrictions in the gateway design overlay area, because those were seen as areas that we did want to we wanted to incentivize density, to bring things back into the core part of the city. So we're looking at these on a case-by-case basis. We do have the capacity to handle this particular development. Can we do every half acre at this density throughout this the city core overlay at that density? No, we're not going to be able to do that. So it really does boil back to what is the vision of the city core? Do we want to incentivize that and do these type of redevelopments? If it's too high density, I'm sure we have not gone in and looked at all of the parcels in the city core overlay that could potentially be redeveloped at such a high density. There will be a particular point that the city core overlay, or the basins within the city core overlay, would have to have certain similar restrictions to what we just did on Mercury Boulevard a few weeks ago. That's just when the cup gets full. We've got to be on the ready and monitoring it and know when that happens.
I guess my point is, I wish that somebody 5 or 10 years ago would have been looking out for that cup getting full.
Right.
Instead of us having to go in and start chopping people's legs off.
We
I'm
did.
trying to do that now with this particular piece. I mean, that's my only point of this is if we're setting a precedent, I want the redevelopment. I'm up for some extra density. This is the highest density project I think I've ever had in front of me in 6 years. And so I guess if we set a precedent to try to get redevelopment here, are we going to set it that we say, yes, it's okay for 30 units an acre? That worries me a little bit, I guess, is all I'm kind of getting at. And unfortunately, I only got my last bit of details. I texted Mr. Roundtree just like 2 hours ago or something, so it's not fair to him, but I had plenty going on, so just only had a chance to look at it. So anyway, I'm here we are making a decision, but those are my concerns.
I can speak up. I'm good, Mr. Gore. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I appreciate what Rick's saying, especially the spirit of wanting to be thoughtful about how we got to where we were in that particular basin and how it impacts what we do moving forward. I do think this is a little different in the sense that as we're having conversations with people within the community and trying to give the best direction we can about where we do want density, I do think this fits that narrative related to the core overlay and trying to attract density downtown. You draw a comparison to the old church site, and I think the density there was 300 units or more per acre. It was high. I mean, I don't remember. Does anybody know that? Who wants to answer that question? Yeah. But it was a lot. It was an intense use because of the multifamily, the commercial, just because of the size of that block. And
wasn't there only less than
It's
100
not just the
condos?
size of the block, but it's the fact that you've got floors.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And levels of units stacked on top of each other.
And the difference between the one Rick was talking about was, this was for student housing, the one we turned down.
sure, in the other basin.
This is for ownership right here, and that's a big difference.
But the other piece too, I know we're having a sidebar chat. I'm gonna keep talking. Y'all go ahead. I'm gonna keep going.
I was curious.
But I do think that, the price point at 125 or even 150 or 175, that's a rare thing downtown. If you can do it at 125, that's a big deal. And, we've got other developments in the downtown area which are starting to do the rooftop patios, and I think that's an attractive thing. It will be different for our community. There will certainly be some people that may not want that, but within probably 2 or 3 blocks of where this is, there's probably the tallest building in the city. So, from my perspective, I think it's a great thing, and I do think it leverages the investment that we made in Maney Avenue and brings some good commercial development there. So, but I appreciate the spirit of where you're coming from.
Yeah, and to add on, I completely understand where Councilman Lance is talking about. I don't think these projects are probably, I would think, comparing apples to apples. I think the project that's on Mercury or out John Bragg Highway would be a little different. But, I keep going back to the investment that the city put on Manny Avenue, and I don't think anyone can argue that that's probably not materialized how we thought it would with the investment that we put on Manny. I forget what that total project was. Does anyone remember, Mr. Gore? I want to say I want to say it was $6 or $8 million was the total investment. It was. I remember how painful it was, that how deep the sewer was there, and how many businesses that we had to shut down as they were trying to drive across their driveways to get. There's a barber shop that I know we all work with, but I'm much more lenient in this area for density just because we've not seen that investment materialize. And I completely understand what Rick's saying on density, but I mean, in my opinion, this is where we would want to make those allowances, and especially since we did say the commercial business district or the core overlay that we were going to exempt that. I don't think it's probably setting necessarily a precedent that we can't follow up with. Now, at some point, if we have a bunch of these that come in that are successful and they want to do those like what Greenhouse Ministries we approved a couple of weeks ago, then that is a discussion we have to have, which I hope we get to that point. I mean, I hope that we have so much redevelopment that's coming down there that we want to be able to have to limit that. But this will be the first one, to my knowledge, that's been approved in that area since we've done Manny Avenue. So I think we've got to start somewhere in what we're doing. Especially, I listened to the council forum on WGNS yesterday, and everyone was talking about how tough affordable housing is, and I don't know anywhere downtown that you could live in that 125 to 150 price range. So I think that'd be a positive.
It's also a little bit relative. We're talking about $225 a foot.
Yeah,
I mean, it's $125,000, but or whatever the number is, but it's $227 a foot. That isn't real necessarily inexpensive housing. I mean, it's for a different argument, but
the lower the square footage you have on a product, the higher the per square foot price is.
Yeah, I get it.
It's going to be.
The refrigerator don't get cheaper just because it's in a smaller
Yeah.
But I think to Shane's point, I agree 100%. Across the street, we've got a 2-story building. We're looking at a 3-story building, but you're talking about stacking units and having development that has a rooftop terrace, which the Vintage, I think, is a good example of a rooftop terrace that is really effective in the right place. And I think that in this particular area, I don't want to use the wrong term, but it's kind of an urban renewal thing, which is what we intended with the streetscape. And it started out as a drainage project that turned into a streetscape project, but it turned into a very expensive one because the intent was to breathe some fresh air and energy into that area. And I know some people over there with car lots, and of course the retail building across the street, or commercial property across the street. And this is just another example of some businesses that would be able to locate in that area, and I think be very successful. Planning Commission did an effort to make sure that we didn't have the wrong kind of businesses in this building and just defeat the purpose. We eliminated like tobacco shops and stuff like that. So the intent was to make sure that they're quality businesses and not something that would be inappropriate for the neighborhood. And so I'm hoping that the project is successful. I like the design of it. I like the balconies on it. I think it's got a nice historical look about it. It doesn't look ultra modern or anything, and it fits in with the downtown area. It brings density to the downtown area, which is something that we absolutely need in the downtown area. When you talk about businesses coming to the square even, one of the things that they always say is we just got to have more head count in this area, and it does bring that head count into the downtown area. So it's one of those areas where density should be considered. And so I compliment Mr. Roundtree for another project that I think fits well with the neighborhood. I know this is 2 in a row, I think, for him that I've really been impressed with as far as the architectural design of it. And so I'm pleased with it. I have a little concern like Rick, but I do think there's something to be said for being the first one to, it's not like everybody's racing for the table to build in this particular spot. And I think that somehow you got to reward the people who are the first to invest in it. And I think that's probably where I would have some leniency on the density.
Is that in the form of a motion? No.
No. I'll move for approval if they're.
All right.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
No.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now move to item 10, ordinance 20 OZ 21 to amend the Gateway Village PUD, formerly known as the North Thompson Place PUD, on approximately 5.9 acres located along North Thompson Lane, north of Medical Center Parkway. Mr. McKnight.
Mayor, Council, before you tonight is an application to amend the Gateway Village PUD. Swanson Development LP presented a zoning application to amend the Gateway Village PUD zoning on approximately 5.09 acres located along North Thompson Lane. During its regular meeting on June 3rd, 2020, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter and then voted to recommend its approval. This zoning amendment will create additional flexibility regarding permitted uses in this PUD. And Mr. Rod Mulchan with the SEC will make a short presentation about the application. Staff would ask that City Council conduct a public hearing and consider this on first reading. Staff is available for questions before or after Mr. Mulchan's presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. Rob Molson, SEC. I'm here tonight on behalf of Swanson Developments to, we're asking tonight is more or less to allow, change the overall PUD to allow for uses that weren't permitted on various floors of the A and B buildings in the front part of the development, to allow for those uses to be on both floors. Previously, they were only on, some of these uses were only allowed on the first floor, and we have some tenants that are on the second floor that are looking to expand to the floor below for more frontage in regards to window shop on that side. So that's more or less the basis. Nothing else is changing in the overall development, so it's just more or less allowing those uses to be flexible between the first and second floors of those A and B buildings. So available for any questions now or after public hearing.
All right, any questions? All right, we'll need to open up or have a public hearing on this amendment to the PUD. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Kara, and I work with my family at Swanson Companies. Joe Jr. is my uncle. I don't have anything to say about this except that I agree, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Kara. I think this is the first time you've come in front of us before, so thank you for being here. Mr.
Mayor,
Swanson.
Council, Staff, Joe Swanson Jr., Swanson Developments. I think I'm pushing about 25 years presenting projects before this committee.
First.
Yeah. In fact, my first before a city was in '86 with Board of Adjustments and Appeals. I have 14 family members that work with me now, so I'm beginning to train, let's leave it that way, some family members to come up and kind of carry our company into the next or future decades. Have any questions? Let me know. I approve this project. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or anyone wishing to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider on first reading ordinance 20 OZ 21.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Lance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now move to ordinance 20-022, public hearing for Shelton Square Special Sanitary Sewer Assessment District. And this is the Water Resources Department. Mr. Gore.
Mayor, Council, again, thank you for the opportunity. What you have before you today is a special sanitary sewer assessment district for properties adjoining and using the Shelton Square subdivision sanitary sewer system. I've got those properties highlighted that are the likely properties to try to utilize that system. There's around 600, we estimate around 638 single-family units, and it would be an additional $500 of special assessment. So staff recommends that you conduct a public hearing and approve this assessment. Will be available for questions after the public hearing.
Mr. Gore, real quickly, for those who are not familiar with the special assessment district, can you explain why those are put in place?
Yes, so I'll put my little animation up here. We, in essence, contributed about $250,000 on this particular development sewer to upsize it so that these other adjoining properties would have the capacity so that they could utilize it. And then when we do that, so we take on the front end funding of that improvement, and then we look at the time value of money over a certain time period, 10 years in this case, and then we recoup that money that we expended through a special assessment. So every single family unit that comes into this area and utilizes this infrastructure that we on the front end funded and upsized, in essence, we recoup that front end payment over hopefully that 10-year time frame.
It doesn't always happen that development pays for itself, but this is a way that the development is actually having to pay for.
This could be looked at very similar to an impact fee. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this special sanitary sewer assessment district, please come to the podium. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider on first reading ordinance 20-022.
Move for approval. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right. We'll move to on motion amending the Community Development 2019-2020 Action Plan for CDBG CV19 funds.
Good evening to the mayor and the council. I'm Helen Glenn with Community Development. And in April, we were notified as an entitlement community that we would be allocated for an additional $520,501 in dollars to respond to the coronavirus. Sam Huddleston and I actually had a conference call with HUD a few weeks later just to see what exactly they wanted as a priority in the community. And of course, the first part of it was they wanted as much as we could do with housing. We went out and, well, actually I did, or met with, or had conference calls with 16 different agencies to see what was the impact, what did they really need. And we came up with a plan that allocates the money mainly through housing, children, and health services. There's a few other little caveats in there, but about not quite a half goes into housing. So we did have a public hearing last week, Tuesday evening. We had a 5-day comment period. We did receive a couple of supporting comments. And it is something we need to have the action plan amended so we can accept this, implement it, and actually get it out in a timely manner.
Okay.
There is a secondary sheet there that sort of gives you that breakout of the dollars.
Any questions?
No questions. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
great, thanks.
We'll move into a wireless equipment purchase for schools.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We, Merciful City Schools request that you approve this motion. This motion would enable us to receive close to $1 million worth of cabling, switches, and wireless network. And we would have to pay about 20% of that cost. This would enable us to upgrade all of our wireless network at 11 of our schools. 2 schools, Black Fox and Salem, are already upgraded. They have the most recent technology. This would also enable us to have wireless network access in all of our parking lots, which is very important these days with the COVID situation. So Murfreesboro City Schools would request that you approve this motion of $184,000.
Any questions?
Pretty good bang for our buck, I would think. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
2 to 10, that's a pretty good 20%. That's pretty good. If you have any more of those that you want to bring to us, we're perfectly. If you could talk to Mr. Griffith about road projects, that'd be great too. All right, we now have reappointments to the Board of Electrical Examiners. Any questions?
So moved. I don't think. So moved.
We've got a motion over here.
Motion?
Yep.
Second.
Second. Mr. LaLance. That's right.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
I do want to make note that if you look at the people who've served on that board, Richie Bolin, Alton Fan, Philip Lim, Carl Pease, in behalf of the city, Michael McCann, Eva Warren, and Tony Ogles, those people have roughly an average service of almost 20 years to the city on serving on the electrical board. Many are small business owners, and as a matter of fact, most everyone on there is a small business owner who've put a significant resources into the electrical business at Murfreesboro. So thank you all for serving. By the way, they don't get paid to serve on that board. So, very important board. All right, any statements?
No, Mayor, but the city attorney has a question he would like council for guidance.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. A few weeks back, I communicated to you that the city was retaining the law firm of Bradley, Aaron, Bolt Cummings to represent the city in connection with a lawsuit that concerns sewer service to outside the city customers. And in that email, I said it would be coming forward to you when we received an invoice for services and propose how that would be paid. A couple of council members contacted me about that and wanted to have a discussion as to whether that is something that should be paid out of the general fund or something that should be paid out of the Water Resources Fund. This particular invoice is for less than $4,000, so it doesn't technically need your approval, but I'm seeking some guidance and approval as to how this should be paid going forward, and so we don't have to necessarily come back to council with every single invoice.
With the concern it'll go over 25
Sure.
in the future.
What do we expect that number to look like ultimately? Do we have any clue?
It would depend on how the lawsuit proceeds.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into specifics of what the strategy is, but if it gets done sooner rather than later, it will be a much smaller number. If it proceeds to trial, it could be a relatively significant number, one that would outstrip the budget or the amount in the legal budget for payment of outside legal services.
My quick thought, and I think this is something that has to do with sewer capacity in a contract that was under Water Resources. I think that would need to be under the Water Resources budget. It's my opinion.
I'll just throw my 2 cents in here. I think I probably burnt some of Adam's time, just him indulging me with this conversation, but I felt like, I know we've got a very healthy water resource department who certainly has a capacity to do this, but I questioned, because it was a city council action that made the decision to ultimately enforce the sewer allocation, of whether or not Water Resources should be paying that bill, since it was our action and not their action. We had a staff recommendation, but ultimately the council made that decision. So I don't have a strong objection to it. I just felt like we needed to have the discussion because I think it's easy to dip into enterprise funds and pull those out because they're there and it's convenient. And it's a lot harder to discipline ourselves to pull that from the general fund because that's just harder to do.
But,
So,
Mr. Tucker, the Water and Sewer Resources Board voted on that to not, or Mr. Gore, I should ask you that. That was sent to us from the Water Resources Board, correct? Did they make that decision, or I know we talked about it at a council workshop.
Right, so the sewer allocation ordinance, yes, that was a recommendation by the board to the council. Outside city sewer customers to protect, I would say that is a companion thought. I don't know if there was an actual action by the board for outside city sewer, but I do believe it was consistent with their recommendation to you about making sure that we protect the sewer capacity. So we'll watch there.
Look, I know this isn't a really great answer, but I mean, my gut probably leads me towards saying I just soon pay it out of the general fund until it gets to some number like 25,000, and then maybe we reassess this thing and see which way, where we're going on it. I don't know. I think I kind of agree with Ronnie that we probably this probably came from more council than it did Water Resources Board, and maybe I guess having to think through.
Mayor, do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
If there are no other comments, I'd like to make a motion that we take the funds from the general fund and based on, like Mr. Lalande says, 25,000 over, we need to revisit this.
All right, you have a motion. Any discussion?
I'll second it.
Second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
I want to make sure I understand. Up until 25,000, nothing comes back to council. It comes back to council once we reach 25. Okay. Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
No.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
No. All right, thank you, Mr. Tucker. Any other business from staff? Any other business from council?
Mayor, you mentioned earlier a project where development was helping pay its way and not passing the burden on to the taxpayer. For those people that ride through the Sulphur Springs Road in Northfield area right now, there's a perfect example of that because we're getting tremendous road improvements, sidewalk improvements, and some redevelopment on some property that had been pretty rough for quite some time. And I think that that's a perfect example of development helping pay for the area around it as far as the structural improvements and the quality of the roadway and sidewalks. So I recognize and respect what y'all did when that project came through, and I think you did a great job because ultimately I think we're going to see a really, really nice intersection there.
All right, I want to, yeah, absolutely, Mr. Smotherman. I want to remind everyone that Rutherford County counts. The census is going on right now. So if you have, it does not take long to get online. Have you been counted? www.my2020census.gov. This is not a way I can tell you for the government to track where you live and how many people are there. It really has to do with funding that we receive as a community from our federal government. That's what it boils down to. So it is extremely important, based on the discussion we've have had over the last couple of years, that we do our part to make sure we're counting. Last thing, and I don't want to bring this up for debate, but I had a post on social media today that I want to talk to our residents. Not everyone has social media. That's why a lot of these things that we do are either through City TV, WGNS. But there was a mask mandate that was put in on Wednesday at 12:01, and I want to go and give you some updates on how that happened. Executive Order 54 from the governor clearly stated that the city mayors did not have the responsibility nor the authority that we could put in a mask mandate. That executive order stated that the county mayor had to put that. And I'm not saying that to throw Mayor Ketron under the bus, but I mean, the facts are the facts. We did not have a council or as a mayor the ability to be able to put a mask requirement in place. Now, a lot of our local businesses have started or had already started putting in these mask requirements in place. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, a lot of your local businesses had put those in place. Several banks had put those in place on even closing lobbies and how they did that. We received a phone call on Sunday night. Originally, when that Executive Order 54 came through, Mayor Ketron called all of us, and I think I feel safe in saying the mayor of Smyrna, Eagleville, and Laverne, our main issue was how we were going to enforce that. It's not that we wouldn't enforce it, because there's been a lot of, during COVID, there's been a lot of different things that have pushed down that I think Mr. Tyndall will agree that we've just sort of looked at each other going, not sure how we're going to enforce that, but we're going to do the best we can. And so that was one of the concerns on the mandate on how you would enforce it. 2 weeks goes by, and we received a phone call this past Sunday from the president of MTSU, the athletic director. We were all talking with Murfreesboro Medical Clinic, St. Thomas, on keeping up with how many people were in the hospital, how many people were persons of interest, which means that they had tested, were in the testing process. We were keeping up with how many people were in intensive care, critical care, how many people were on the vents, and even looking at how many people were having upper respiratory infections compared over the last 3 years. We all met as a mayor's caucus on Monday and ultimately said that we would support Mayor Ketron in any decision that he had to make, that this is what we were hearing from all the different medical groups inside our city limits. Stonecrest and Smyrna at the time last week had ceased any non-elective surgeries, and that is still going on at Stonecrest. There's no non-elective surgeries that are taking place in that hospital, only what they would consider life-threatening or mandatory or surgeries that have to take place, so no knee surgeries, anything like that. So using that information, we all did agree that we felt like that a mask requirement was something that would be and benefit the community. Mayor Ketron made that decision, and we supported that decision. So, all I can tell you is Metro Nashville put in their requirement, and as of yesterday, they had 6,000 verbal warnings, no citations. So the thing that I think we need to do as a community, I don't know if the mask requirement helps or hurts. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but we're relying on people inside our community, not on the national level. We're listening to people inside our community at the hospitals that live here, that work here, and that's what they're telling us. This is not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. I can tell you that anyone that's sitting on this council, local politics and local elected officials are at the bottom end of the food chain. So we get told from the state officials and the federal officials all the time that give us mandates on how we have to handle things. And out of anyone that's here, I can tell you, none of us like mandates. We don't like being told how we're supposed to handle things at the local level. But in this case, this is all unprecedented, and no one has dealt with this before. So we are doing the absolute best that we possibly can do. And so if a mask requirement helps, also saying that Murfreesboro City Schools is doing a mask requirement, Rutherford County City Schools, Middle Tennessee Christian, Providence, all of our local schools have decided that that's something that they're going to do. We're going to see how we can do this to be able to hopefully have athletics in the fall, to be able to have college football in the fall, and all of those things that we've all become accustomed to enjoy. So please wear your mask. If you can't social distance, put a mask on. Clearly, if you have medical issues, you have PTSD, don't wear a mask. But if at all possible, putting the mask on could save a relative's life or could help us slow this spread. So I want to give you a little insight on how we made that decision and how we're backing Mayor Ketchern in our county, and that we all are going to continue to work together.
Can I add to that? Just go sort of quickly, one of the things that I think would be really important, and I don't know if it's something we could put out on city TV or what the right format for this is. Maybe it's the city puts out some Facebook posts or whatever. But, within the governor's order, there are some exclusions, 8 or 10 or so exclusions. And those are extremely important to how you view a mask mandate. The fact that you can't mandate it for a child under 12. You can't mandate it if you're outside and not around somebody. I think that when, look, you like it or hate it, whatever, I think the reality is if you think this means you got to wear a mask when you're on a bike ride around your neighborhood, you're probably going to be more likely to hate it, right? It doesn't mean that. Now, you may hate it just because you got to wear it into an elevator with 15 other people. I probably hate it less in an elevator with 15 people. I feel more comfortable maybe with a mask on when somebody sneezes on me. So, look, I guess if we somehow could put that out, Craig, if you maybe get with Mike Browning or something, I think those exclusions are extremely important because they do tell the story of what does a mandate mean. Because I think a lot of times when we hear mandate, the first, they're going to make me wear it everywhere. And if I go on a bike ride or if I go jogging around my neighborhood, it's not really quite that. It has exemptions for people with medical situations. All kinds of exemptions in there that we cannot mandate, that we would not mandate, even if we had the authority, but that the governor has chosen not to. So anyway, it's
Craig, maybe a question for you. The temporary directive that we had for our employees, does this change anything as it relates to the temporary mandate, directive that you put out?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
So, folks, the last thing I want to say, our police department has enough that they deal with on a daily basis, the men and women that we have protecting our community. And it's not the intent to turn our police department into mask police. So do the best that you can, social distance, and hopefully there will be a vaccine sometime into this year, first quarter of next year, and we don't have to deal with this. But where we are right now is this thing is turned into such a partisan issue that you don't know what information is out there. That the only thing I can say is it's an election year, and who knows what we're seeing, whether it's correct or not correct. It just depends on what's coming across. So all I can say that for my family, we're going to wear a mask if we can't social distance, and so we're going to set the example. You see Eddie's got his mask on, Rick has got his mask, Bill's got his, Ronnie's got his, Kurt's got his, I've got mine. We're 6 feet apart if anyone wants to bring a tape measure up here and measure, but we're going to do our part. We're going to set the example, and as a community, let's just hope we can get through this, and this time next year we're talking about budget in sports and not talking about COVID-19.
Mayor, let me share just something, because it was helpful for me anyway. A couple of words that some of us people of faith have, a couple of words that we hear a lot of, and I just wanted to share this with you. The two words are grace and mercy. And if you've ever had them clarified for you, I heard them all my life, but there are a couple of things that I think are pertinent to the circumstances that we're all going through. Grace is getting something that you don't deserve, and mercy is not getting something that you do deserve. And I just encourage our community to show grace and appreciate mercy as we go through this together, because I think looking at, none of us really know what's around the corner, but if we show each other a little kindness on a regular basis and empathy for what somebody else is having to deal with, if we consider someone else's perspective a little bit more than our own, then sometimes I think we'll never fall short. And I think, like I say, showing a little grace and appreciating mercy would help us go a long way in trying to navigate the uncertain times that we're in.
I think it's a good ending to a meeting. Craig, are we meeting next Thursday?
We're assessing that now. The Thursday after that is election night, so we probably won't meet that night. It depends on how many items come in over the next few days, whether we'll meet next Thursday or not. Right now, there's not many, so we may just miss that, miss the next week, and then the following week would be a workshop. So we'll have to make an assessment then as whether we do a workshop with some action items, depending on how many we have, or move that to another day.
Okay. All right, with that, thank you, staff, for all your hard work. Thank you for what y'all are doing with the Murfreesboro City Schools. I watched your entire session the other night and was proud to see how prepared that y'all have and how much y'all put together. So I'm proud of what you're doing, and hopefully as school starts back, we'll be ready to go. So I know several schools are starting back on Monday this upcoming week. So thank you so much, and y'all have a good night.